Welcome to Behind the Badge. We are here today, and we have a very interesting person we're to talk to today. Something that has sort of interested me through my entire career. And with my career as police work, I was able to work with her hand in hand with several different stories and with her profession, I should say. And without further ado, let's introduce our speaker. Our guest today will be Denise Crosby from the Aurora Beacon. Is that, what's the official name now?
The Beacon News.
Beacon, just the Beacon News.
The Beacon News, right.
It was Copley.
It always was just the Beacon News. People tend to say Aurora Beacon News, but then we stuck the insignia on the front, the Aurora, to try to make it more local, but it really is the Beacon News.
Right, excellent.
Yeah.
I've been reading the Beacon since I was a little kid. And in fact, that's how I began how to read. You know, it was reading the Beacon, yeah.
That's very cool.
And very interesting and very, because it's a local. It's the local thing, and you're getting the flavor of what's going on in the different area. And you have different types of Aurora Beacon. There's a Yorkville, Kendall County, is it?
Yeah, we call it different editions that we try to, yes, we've got the Kendall County edition, we had the Tri-Cities edition, which we recently dropped, and we, of course, still have the Aurora edition as well, which tries to focus more on the news that's
their local
in
stuff.
in that particular
of what's happening,
section, right.
And I personally have worked with several of your reporters and stuff through the years, being the, what was I called, the PIO?
Public Information Officer.
Thank you. Thank you for telling me what I was, because I don't remember. It's having a hard time remembering all these things. But I remember meeting each of the reporters, and the chief said, you know, go ahead, take them out to lunch, meet them, get to know them a little bit, so if you know what's happening, they know you, you know them, you know, to build a relationship a little bit. It was funny, I did that with like 3 or 4 of your reporters, and no problem, everything was great, you know, and the chief's buying, so that's great, you know. And the last time I did it was with one of your last reporters here, and she says, I can't do that. That's against the rules. You're influencing me.
Seriously?
Yeah, I'm going, oh, okay. Well, I just wanted to meet you. How's, you know, she says, you can't influence me with your lunch, you know, so I says, well, that's fine. So the ethics portion of the schooling maybe is picking up a couple of beats higher, I don't know.
You know what, who knows? I mean, I think it's just a matter of, what she's referring to is we don't want a source to buy us lunch, obviously, because then it makes it look like you're somehow going to take something from them.
I never thought of it that way.
That way, sure.
So she you sort of brought it up to me. I go, oh, well, I can't see what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. And, you know, that was fine. We just had to talk right there. Then it saved me some, you know, saved the chief a couple bucks. Yeah, so we didn't have to worry about it. But it's been very interesting because with the police department, and of course with the show Behind the Badge, talking about police and the partnerships they make with different people and organizations and stuff, the reporters are really tight and important part of police work because you guys pretty much help us hand in hand.
Absolutely.
If something's going on, if something's happening. An example would be Neighborhood Watch. We have a Neighborhood Watch program, which is a very important program to get the neighbors to know each other and to help each other solve problems that they have in their neighborhoods. They wouldn't know we had that going on unless you guys were able to help us with that and get it out. And do a story on it and discuss it and different things with that. Yeah. But I mean, it's been a very important part, but it was also, like I said in the beginning, it's an interesting part for me to understand how you guys do your job. Can you give me just a normal day for you? What would a normal day be?
Well, a normal day would be you don't know what's going to happen that day. Obviously, you can come to work and you have a helicopter crash almost in the backyard, and then suddenly everybody in that newsroom and beyond becomes part of a breaking news story that will carry on throughout that day and possibly even the rest of the week. Or you can come into the newsroom and there won't be anything necessarily going on, but you've still got. I can guarantee you, Barry, that by the time noon comes, I will have calls from people, you know, who are asking for something or wanting something or have a great story. So you may end up going out that day on something. You may, this is me personally, you know, you may end up scheduling things, have somebody come in. The reporters are, if they're not out there in the community, you know, working on a story, then they're sitting at their desks and they're getting that story ready for deadline, obviously.
So your specific job is?
Right now, what I am, and this I've been for a long time. In fact, I think almost 17 years. I started working at the Beacon. Maybe almost going on 18 years. I came in as an editor, a features editor. Then I got moved over to assistant city editor, and then.
So you started as an editor?
I started as an editor,
wow.
yeah, and then And then Mike Chapin, who was the managing editor then, decided he wanted to turn me into a columnist, just a columnist, that nothing else. And so,
because that's where your true talent is?
I don't know.
You know, I say
I
with
don't
patrol,
know.
I'm a sergeant now, I did the other things, but patrol is my first love.
Absolutely, and I love writing. I love
Right.
writing and telling stories. So, and as a columnist, you can write whatever you want. You don't have to. You can
Right,
tell
right.
you have your own voice when you do it. So, they put me in that role, and I remained in that role ever since until a couple of years ago when the Sun-Times Media came in and we started doing some different things with our reorganization, and then I was named senior editor of all 4 papers, which means the Beacon News, the Naperville Sun, the Courier News in Elgin, and the Herald News in Joliet. So I was in charge of content for all 4 of those papers. But then we did some reorganization again. They got rid of my boss was let go, and then they were getting rid of a couple of those positions, and so they said, "Well, Denise, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to write again."
Yeah.
So they made me senior columnist, which means I'm now the senior columnist for all those papers.
So does that mean that so it's just for your column? You don't have to read everybody else's to make sure it looks good,
No, I'm not. I do some editing because we all. I mean, I'm still. I'm still sort of in management in that way, so I still edit things sometimes. But for the most part, I write. I'm doing mostly writing. Yeah.
So what's the hardest part of your job?
The hardest part of my job. Wow, the hardest.
Is it to come up with stories?
No, never.
That's easy, huh?
Yeah, there's so many stories out there.
Wow.
There's so many stories out there. Yeah, I guess the hardest part of my job would be. Wow, that's a good question. I guess finding the time to do them all, or the hardest part is telling people you can't do a story because for whatever reason, or the hardest part might be working on a story and then that person at the last minute pulls their cooperation and
said, "No, I don't want that. Don't write that stuff. I changed my mind," or whatever.
I just had an interesting one where a gentleman called me, and his best friend, a very good friend of his, had been busted for downloading child porn. And he said, the laws are unfair, and this guy's really a good guy. And so I talked with him quite a while, ended up talking to the man who was arrested, ended up talking to his wife. And I thought it would really be a great story to kind of show this side of it, because this guy was a very well-known name in the community.
Right.
He was part of his kids' high school. He was a religious education instructor. He was everything, and he got busted for. So I ended up, we talked a lot. We met with his wife.
So you did a full story on that then?
No, because then at the last minute, his lawyer said no.
Okay.
So
all that work was wasted.
Well, in a way, but what I'm going to do on Sunday, for an example, I'm doing sort of the law enforcement side of it, because law enforcement people who work with child porn totally have a different take on what this guy is saying. He's saying the laws are too harsh. They're saying the laws are tough, but in the end, they get a slap on the wrist. And
right.
So it's an interesting issue.
A very interesting issue. I want to talk a lot more about that when we come back. We'll be back in a minute here to talk more about the different aspects of reporting, and we'll be right back with Behind the Badge.
It begins innocently enough. You don't return a phone call. You break a date at the last minute. But in fact, it's the beginning of a pattern. And soon, your friend with mental illness realizes you're avoiding them. But what if you knew that your friendship was the key to their recovery? Would you still lock them out of your life?
No, what'd she say?
She said whatever.
No, she says that all the time.
What's that?
Hello? I'm on the phone. Mom, I'm on the phone! Hello? I'm on the phone.
Who's this? It's me. I'm on the phone. Mom.
Oh, you're on the phone. All right.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Anyway.
Who are you talking to? Kelly?
Mom.
All right.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you.
Welcome back to Behind the Badge. We were just talking about the legal aspects of reporting, and I know with police work, we can give you certain things, and some people will talk to us also about, well, don't give that out because that's bad. I mean, I don't want that to be out, and we don't have any choice.
Yeah.
If it's, we put it out, it's put into a regular form that's sent out, and we fax it to all the agencies, and you guys then can decide if you want to use it or not. In the old days, 1981, when I started police work, is that old? Yeah,
Yes.
It's pretty old. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. And we had reporters would stop by the police departments. on an early basis,
Yes.
like 4 or 5 in the morning, you know, a local WSPY and other places would come by, and they would get the stories from there, and if the reporter was good at what he did, he was able to get more. It was sort of real sketchy, you know, you could get stuff when you didn't, and there was fighting, and there was bad blood, you know, and different issues. And now it's pretty much black and white, what happens and what doesn't happen. I mean, like domestics, if it's somebody's arrested, yes. If there's not, you don't get that information. It's not something you want, you don't need it. If it's a crime that happened, it goes to you.
Sure.
You know, we went to a class on that to learn how to do that properly. It was really surprising. We can't give you their address. We give you the 100 block of Main Street, Yorkville, or whatever, and the age of 27 or something like that, and you can't get juvenile stuff.
Right.
But if different information on a traffic stop or a traffic accident, you can get every bit of information on that. You can get the address, the date of birth. You can get everything on there, and you would think that they wouldn't give that out because of
FOIA?
stealing your identification.
Oh, well,
you know.
It's interesting you bring all this up because as of late, with the new FOIA laws that were introduced,
right.
It's actually,
we had to go to a class.
You had to go to class
Yeah.
to learn all that, and it would seem like would be easier for the press to get this information now because of the Freedom of Information Act that has. It's to make it easier for newspapers or the press, the media, to get this information. But in some ways, it's sort of backfired because we found since that law was enacted that a lot of law enforcement agencies now have looked closer at the law, and they said, we've been giving out too much information.
So they go to letter of the law instead of the spirit of the law.
Yes, and our lawyers are very concerned about that because they think that the police departments are interpreting it too
literally.
Absolutely, and that they're really keeping too much. So it's really been in some ways much more of a struggle for us to get information. I have to say, Kendall County has been great. We have a good relationship with them. The problem has not been with Kendall County. It's been more with the Aurora Police Department. We used to give us more information, and now some of that stuff that you said we used to be able to get so easily, we're not getting so easily anymore.
Oh.
So
see, we fill it out. Our officers do it automatically now. They do the report. They fill out the press release. It gets faxed over. The sergeant looks at it, okays it, and we fax it ourselves.
Well, one of the things you mentioned that I wanted to talk a little bit more about too was that relationship between the reporters and the police.
Right.
I think if police, it is a lot about relationships and trust. And at one point, especially in the past, that relationship was based a lot on trust and this kind of thing. So a really good police reporter could get some really good information.
Right.
And I think
because you
now
knew they would use the proper stuff and not and you can't use juvenile information, names or something.
Right.
If you use that, you're going to be in trouble for. And I know some of the times where it slipped through us, they go, "Whoa, can't use that," you know, and you know. You're good enough at the job, you know that you can't use it.
We don't use juvenile stuff, and there's times that it's not even so much the law as it is, but it's just we have our own moral code that we go by. You know, we're not in it to hurt people necessarily. You know, we get calls from people that say, "Please leave this information out. I wasn't this or I wasn't that." And we can't. We say if we get it from the police department, it's public information. We're going to run with it, and we just simply do that. So we oftentimes get people calling up saying, please don't print that.
Sometimes if it doesn't go through, I mean, because I'll look at this stuff, I tell you, I do some sort of funny things. On my press releases, I'll put in there some unique words as a narrative.
To see if it goes through?
Yeah, and it goes through verbatim. I mean, it goes through.
What would be a unique word you'd use, Barry?
Well, I mean, like substantially more damage was done. You know what I mean? Just something weird, a little bit different. To see if they use that word.
Yeah, it depends on who's editing it.
Yeah, it was sort of funny because it's word for word. And I tell my officers to get them more involved and more part of the program. It says, hey, just try this. Try putting in some weird, different, bigger words or something, and see if they put it in.
And see if they get it in, yeah.
And more likely they will put it in because it sounds good. It sounded good.
Yeah, all the police reporters fathom themselves as writers, and the reporters fathom themselves as
but
police
why
officers.
wouldn't some of this stuff go through? Like if we have 3 DUIs coming or something, and 2 made it and 1 didn't or something or whatever, is it just because you have so much space sometimes?
Probably.
You know what I mean?
Although I would think we try to get all DUIs.
Or maybe it was, a mailbox broken and 2 DUIs, or something like that.
Yeah, it depends. We used to put a lot more police information in, but as our space has gotten smaller, we have to be a little more choosy about what we do put in. So it all comes down to picking and choosing. And
So I mean,
sometimes
like
that's
a
tough.
damaged mailbox, if you had 15 damaged mailboxes,
Then it would be a story.
Right, and one is like, whatever, you
Right.
know.
That's pretty much, and that's a news judgment thing, what you think is, what you
So
think would be.
who picks that? Who chooses that? Is that an editor does that, or?
Well, I think there's always kind of sort of a policy in place that the whole newsroom goes by.
So it's sort of a known thing. You use this, you use that, whatever, and just.
Pretty much so. I think it gets, you know, in the end, it's usually the editor that does it, because an eager police reporter might put this information in, but then, you know, it might get edited out
Right.
because it's lack of space or just,
Right,
you know,
right.
trying to get the best stuff.
You know, it's interesting you said that with a reporter and stuff, and I always wondered this, and they were very cool, and we'll talk about that a little bit later when we discuss. I rode with one of your reporters for 8 hours, and I asked him there at the time, I says, is there a sort of duking out to get on the front page, to try to get on the front page, you know, because that's sort of a cool thing, your story's on the front page, and they really downplayed it. They said, no, you know, it doesn't matter at all, you know, we don't care about that. Now, that's not true, is it?
Everybody has egos.
Yeah.
And you know, writers all have egos.
Yeah.
Because absolutely, they want their
So
stuff
they're
on the front
duking it
page.
out for the best story.
I'm not sure they're duking it out.
Well, maybe just in their head. You know what I mean?
I think they're always happier if their story gets on the front page.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, you like to see your stuff on the front page? Absolutely.
Do they say, hey, I'll take that fire. I want to go to that fire call. I want to go do this.
It's usually the editor, John Russell, who's a city editor for the Beacon, or you know, Nick Ryer, who's a city editor for the Naperville Sun, or Paul Harth, who's the city editor for the Elgin Courier. They're usually the ones going, so and so, or the fire, go on out and get it. Or the reporter might say, I'm here, I'll go take that.
Right.
I can do it. You know, it's kind of a combination. Somebody better go get it. Somebody better be out the door real fast.
Okay, here's a question for you. I just thought of this. Now, they always ask police officers, what's the closest show, sitcom or whatever show that reminds you of your job of police work?
Okay.
I mean, and it doesn't have to be a sitcom, but any kind of show, like Law and Order, or is it this, or is it that, or whatever. And I always say, well, if you can remember it, Barney Miller was probably the closest thing that, you know, I mean, it was just
Right.
like the camaraderie and the
Sure.
fun and having, it was just a neat thing. What show would come closest to your, as a reporter show?
I'm not sure there's that many
How about a
out there.
TV?
I'm
TV
not-
movie?
A
How
TV
about
movie?
like the old times, they always had reporter movies. Remember that? In the old movies and stuff? Well, Ed, I'll go do this call, I'll go do that call, you know, what do you think, you know, about this? They had their hats on with the press thing on here.
Yeah.
So you don't have any favorite one that you think that was the best, huh?
Well, I guess no, not really. The one that I still think John Russell, our city editor, reminds me of Lou Grant on the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
There you go.
He's a great city editor. He's, you know, that tough, go get 'em, news first. I mean, when I called him a little bit ago about the
Right.
accident, he was
Right.
like, "Thank you, Denise."
We'll
You know,
be on
he was
it.
right on it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, no, I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of sitcom characters in all of us, I think.
Right. And the camaraderie that builds and stuff, you know, and try to get along and to work with each other and
Sure.
to get, because I mean, you guys, I know since I've been doing this as a PIO, we've had, I'll bet 6 reporters I've
Yeah.
dealt with, you know, something through the times and stuff, and some of your long-standing ones are still there. Steve Lord is there, and some of the other ones that have been there for a while and stuff. But it's been interesting with the personalities, you know, and if there was camaraderie or not, and how that was going with
I
it,
think,
you know?
I think the reporters have a pretty good camaraderie. I think they hang out together a lot of times
Yeah.
after work, and they're always covering each other's backs all the time.
You know what I want to talk about our next episode when we come back is the 8 hours that I rode with your guy and how it went and stuff, and it was a while ago, so I'm just going to ask you more questions about that.
Okay.
And see what we get more good
Sounds
inside
good to me.
information. We'll be back in a couple of minutes here with Behind the Badge.
Real men know that getting tested is the way to take care of their families. That's why real men wear gowns. For a list of the tests you need, go to ahrq.gov.
Ready. 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 Ready.
It can be a little awkward when your friend tells you he's been diagnosed with a mental illness. But what's even more awkward is, if you're not there for him, he's less likely to recover.
I'm here to help, man, whatever it takes.
Welcome back to Behind the Badge. We've got a couple of interesting questions we've talked to Denise about here, and we're going to get those answers now. Okay, who's your favorite reporter? Who is somebody that you looked up to as a reporter? We were talking about it at the closed segment here.
Yeah.
It was interesting because you said
nobody.
Nobody.
No, I mean, there's been a lot of good reporters out there. There's still great reporters out there, obviously, that I...
But nobody as a kid that you looked up to, or nobody you read every time, you know, and you said, wow, that's really interesting, or like Mike Ryko, or...
I mean, he's great. No.
Did I say that name right?
Royko?
Royko,
yeah.
yeah.
No, Royko is obviously a great columnist, and I certainly admire him and admired him when he was alive and when he wrote. But no, not necessarily. I guess I just...
no author, no...
I think I got into journalism because I really always kind of had a sense you could make a difference with journalism, and I love to write, so... You know, what better way to do that is
I felt the same way with police work, where on a one-on-one basis you can make a pretty good difference.
You can impact people.
And
you write things that make changes, that do actually make changes in a community, and that's cool.
Right, it really does help out.
You know, and I think the greatest thing that I've found in doing what I do is I meet so many unbelievable people, and doing amazing things.
Right.
It's really very humbling to do what I do, because I'm telling the stories, some unbelievable stories, and it's humbling to me because you see people doing these things, making a community better, and it really you write a story that's not so good, and it's about somebody who's struggling or whatever else, but you always come back humbled and feeling blessed.
Have you found that your job makes you a better person?
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too. Same thing with police work. It makes you a much better person to see the struggles other people have and what's going on. And I guess you really appreciate what you have and how you can help other people. And you go that extra to help them out. I feel the same way. Sort of neat how that coincides.
I think in that
careers.
regard, journalists and police officers are alike if you're in it for the right reason, you know, to really make a difference.
And God knows we've got bad apples in every bunch.
Yeah,
you know,
and I think that's why when you have a good relationship between the police department and the media, it really is a strong relationship that can make a big difference and you know, I know that I've written columns that you know, people like the sheriff's department doesn't like or the police department doesn't like, but I really feel like I need to write those, and I try to be as fair as possible.
Exactly. I was just going to say, do you feel like that's your number one priority is to make sure? I mean, I just read one. I think it was yesterday or the day before, something with the tickets that you were.
Oh yes.
And at the end, you know, you said, hey, the police are doing this, trying to help out. Are they being overzealous? Are they, you know? But this is why they're doing things. And at the end, you put in there, a gal said, hey, she appreciates it because she did have a burglary happen. You know what I mean? And you were going on both sides of it. You just didn't hammer the police saying they're being jerks or whatever, you know, or the people are being whiners, you know, and hammer them. You got both sides of the story.
And I do believe that I try to, and I think as a columnist, you have the right to put your opinion out there, and if I do feel strongly about something, I will put it out there, but a lot of times there's such great stories. At the same time, you want to get both sides, because they're, you know, you cannot be black and white. Some columnists are very black and white, and that's great. That's who they are. But I guess I'm enough of a journalist. I really want to make sure both sides get represented.
And your motif is that way, is to.
I hope so. Yeah,
I think it is. Now, the thing I was going to talk about, I was really interested in the police work, like I said earlier, in being a reporter, and I got permission from the chief, and I got permission from your top dog, editor or whatever,
managing editor probably,
to come ride with one of your reporters for 8 hours. And that was very interesting to be in the inside to see how do you choose these stories, what's going on, what's happening, and writing with him and interviewing the different people and trying to get the stories from them, and how much work it is. It is not an easy job. I mean, you're doing a lot of hustling back and forth, researching, going in, and you got to be there to talk to the person, and
you have to turn it around by deadline.
Yes, and then you can't, over the phone, it's not as cool. It doesn't work as well. You know, you got to be there in person to get the real good information and stuff. You can do the little stuff over the phone, but it really helps out that way. One of the things I was interested in, and I touched on a little bit earlier, is who gets the front page, who gets the front story, who chooses that stuff. You guys have meetings daily with the reporters and just to get together.
Well, we meet once a week with the reporters and talk about the stories that they're working on.
Maybe that was the day I was there. I just got lucky.
With reporters?
Yeah, it was a meeting with everybody
But
together.
the editors meet every day, actually 2 times a day. We meet at 10:30 in the morning and talk about what the stories are for the next day's paper, what will probably be on the front page. Photographers are there to represent it, saying, okay, this is what we got, we have to still shoot this, we need to do this, we need to do that. And then we meet again around 3:30 in the afternoon to see what came in, because obviously from 10 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock things can change. What came in, what didn't come in, I'm not going to get this story, I'm still waiting for this source to get back to me, we couldn't get this shot, whatever reasons come up, or a better story comes in, breaking news, a million things can happen during the day. But around 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, you really kind of need to know what
That's
you
when
got.
the puzzle starts coming together.
You need to start figuring out, we got to get this plan together to hand it over to the copy desk, the designers, and make it all into...
Front page, picture, how big the picture is. That's the editor's job? I mean, the story's bigger?
Obviously, if most people are readers of the Beacon, we've gone to a tab format, which is like after the Sun-Times. So now it's usually just one big picture on the front. In the past, it would be a big picture, and
several
maybe
stories.
Some others. Now it's a little bit different. We just do a picture usually on the front with some what we call bokehs or reefers that go inside to tell you what's inside. But yeah, you still have to have
jargon there. Reefers is something different with us. But
reefers are definitely something different from you. There's a couple other words that are sort of fun. Mugs. Mugs. We always say mugs all the time. You guys call them mugs. We picked that up from you guys. We need a mug here right away. And other people in the community go, a mug? What do you mean a mug? You just kind of think everybody knows what that is. But that you have to have that one good picture that's going to get on the front page.
And that's something we didn't talk about too much is the photographers.
Oh yeah, they're journalists also. Yeah.
And these guys are nice guys too.
Yeah,
I mean, I've dealt with several of them. Donnell, I talked to several times. Is he still with you?
He works for us as a stringer. He does a lot of freelance stuff.
Super nice guy. And that's where the relationship helps also. Where we recognize the guy. We got an extra something. Oh yeah, come on in. Yeah,
and they know, they appreciate that.
And that's not a problem. It's not the public coming in doing gawking or whatever because you want certain things to happen right and correct and stuff. And that's a relationship you build as an example. And with the reporter also.
Absolutely.
What's coming up and how it's going. So at the end of the day, then it's all got to be in by 3 o'clock.
Usually the stories have to be in by 6 o'clock.
Okay.
But by 3 or by 4,
the puzzle needs to start coming.
It needs to start coming together. Yeah, the editors need to know what is going to be available so that they can sit down with the designers and copy editors and say, okay, this is what we're going to have for the front page. This is what we're going to have for page 2. This is what we're going to have for page 3. Then you go through each page and kind of have a budget, and then it shows you exactly what's going to be on
breaking news,
each page.
crazy, something comes out at 5 o'clock. Would it make the front page?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely.
So like 5:30? Could it go after 6?
Yeah, there's times we've had to tear up the. Oh, absolutely. Oh, I mean, because you have to. I mean, the paper goes to press, later on in the night, like around midnight or so. So any time up until that point, you can start to get other stories in. It takes a lot more hustling on everybody's part.
Right.
Now, the other point I have to bring up, obviously, is if you have the time, everything is updated on the web. We constantly update the web.
Is that where you think it's going
many times.
Is that where the world's going to? You think it will be a web?
Certainly we're going to be, much more of our focus is on the web. We're hoping that it's going to be a great partnership of web and print product together. Many people think the print product will go away. I don't think it'll be in my lifetime for sure. I think people still want to hold a piece of newspaper in their hands. I know I do. But information, the quicker the better, and that's what the web is about.
Interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. I thank you so much for coming, Denise, and talking to us about this. We could do another whole show just to talk more about this. It's fascinating stuff, but thanks again for coming.
You're welcome. I appreciate it.
And thank you for coming and visiting us and talking to us again. This is my Mr. Rogers segment of the reporting news. I always enjoyed that show, and I hope that we were able to give you as much as Mr. Rogers did. Thanks for coming behind the badge, and we'll see you next time.